The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us once again on this Monday evening. It's great to see everybody start piling into the show. We've got a jam-packed show full of news, statistics, and a lot of training camp whatnots to get to. But first, let's get to our special guest of the night. As he joins us once again, one of our biggest friends of the show and one of our biggest supporters, we'd like to welcome our good buddy Tyler from Titans Time Podcast. Tyler, welcome to the Power Hour once again.
Thanks for having me on, Michael. Always a pleasure coming on here, talking football news around the league and Titans with you. It's going to be a great time tonight.
And it always is. And don't forget, everybody, as we're piling in, make sure that you check out Tyler's channel at the Titans Time Podcast. I'm getting tongue-tied. Sorry about that.
A little bit of a tongue twister there, but you got it.
It is, but make sure that you check out his YouTube channel and make sure you follow him on his social media platforms. Give the man some love. Show him some love. He's putting out great content every week, and it's going to get even more better as soon as the regular season starts. We're looking forward to that. And as you're piling in on a show, don't forget, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube at the Power Hour 615. On YouTube, smash that like button, and don't forget, sharing is caring. You share the show, the more we grow. And as we get into it, we have everybody starting to pile in. As always, Mom's definitely been waiting to get on the show. Good seeing you, Mom. Lou Man jumping in second, and our good buddy Titan Pratt jumping in the show. What's up, Titan Pratt? Good seeing you, buddy. Lou Man is definitely ready to bring on some pretty good perspective tonight. Mom, once again, welcoming everybody into the show. It's great to see everybody tonight. We have so much news to get into, and I don't even know where to start. But hey, that's why I get this stuff done early, so that way we can just jump into it and get rolling. So once again, as we jump into the top news, welcome to the Power Hour. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and let's get into it. Jumping into the top news, and of course, the top story of the day is, of course, Deshawn Watson. Deshawn Watson has been the big story basically all offseason, depending on what his situation was going forward with his, we'll say, rendezvous with certain establishments of questionable curiosity. And of course, that being said, it had finally come down to all the stories and all the testimony being laid down, where we have been given all this information to Judge Sue Robinson, who was a third-party mediator at this. And at that point, she was going to make a decision to help the NFL basically be guided into a better decision-making process of how long he should be suspended for this. And after her recommendation, it appears that she has come to a decision. Deshawn Watson would be suspended for 6 games, leading the NFLPA and Watson's camp to come out, basically saying that they would agree with this, and they are basically putting the ball in the NFL's court. So, Tyler, your thoughts on all this?
My first thoughts are 6 games is not enough. It should definitely be more, and I'm sure over the next day or two, we will probably see the NFL appeal this and go for more. And yeah, this is going to turn into a knockdown, drag out type deal. We've been going on 2 years now. So, might as well probably add another 2-3 months onto it at least. So, yeah, don't think it's enough. Think it should be more, given how many cases have been brought against him. And I know I think the judge only had to rule off of 4 or 5 of them, if I remember reading that right. And
that's right.
And then, even since then, he's settled on with 3 of the last 4. There's only 1 left that's not settled. And I'm just like, I don't know. To me, it seems like if you're having to settle with all of these women, over 20-something women, and you're settling with them, giving them money, you're trying to keep something hid there, it feels like to me. And I feel like the judge should have said more, but, we'll see how the NFL goes about it here.
And before I get into my thoughts, I definitely got to give a shout out to our good buddy P. Shark joining us on the show as well. It's always good to see you, Shark. Got to check out his podcast as well, Let's Be Real Podcast, doing fantastic work. And also our buddy Ryan Harris of the Jump Pass podcast. Always make sure to check him out on all of any available platforms where you can hear podcasts. So I definitely wanted to give them a shout out before I jumped into my thoughts. So getting to my thoughts on the whole premise of everything, it's basically a situation the NFL knew that this was potentially going to be an issue, where there was going to be a suspension put down, where it was going to be unfavorable in the eyes of the public. And this is the problem I think Roger Goodell was basically preparing himself for. The NFL, for the last decade, really has been just inept at trying to hand down punishments. It's either been too harsh or it's been too little.
Mm-hmm.
Hence the reason why they brought in a third-party mediator, Judge Sue Robinson, which this was a stipulation in agreement 2 years ago, where this would kind of take the power out of the NFL's hands and kind of give them a second opinion, basically, to actually have an idea of what they should do from here. Now, it's inevitable that this was a situation that the NFL potentially wasn't going to agree on. We all knew that this could be a potential issue, especially that Watson may be getting off with an unfavorable suspension, as it was put out yesterday by the NFLPA, basically describing that they would not fight the punishment, they would not go to court, that basically they handed this off to the NFL, and it was at the point where they would say, here's what's going to happen. We've already made our decision. We've come out. We've said we support whatever the judge says. Whatever the suspension is, it's fine. So more than likely, there had been a source that got the hold of this early, and it became favorable to their point. So this was already known. So the NFLPA basically just put out in public, like, we're fine with this. This is all up to the NFL. Whatever the NFL does, it's in their court. But no, the NFLPA is also going to let the NFL know if they're going to appeal this, then more than likely this will go to court. And I suspect that this will, because right now, as it is out in just the mainstream media of people's opinions, about 78% of people disagree with this decision. So really, Tyler, I mean, the biggest situation is, where are we going to go from here, knowing what we know now?
Ooh. Well, like you said, I think it's going to go to court. I think some more games will end up getting tacked on. I think he'll be suspended a little bit longer. I think it'll be one of those things where if this goes to court, we could end up seeing him get maybe 10 games suspended. Again, not really where I think it should be personally, but if it got bumped up 4 more games, then I think, as far as from the NFL standpoint, they could kind of paint that as, okay, we did everything that we could do. Here's what we were able to bump it up to. And, maybe the public wouldn't be going for Goodell's head as much on something like that.
And really, it's going to come down to this. I look at this as a situation where the NFL understands that this is a different era we're in. They understand the writing on the wall, basically, so to say. And in a league where you have a 49% advantage of women attending and watching these games and being fan of the league, they have to understand, and they realize that in an era of where women are fighting for rights and where really they've been taking the back seat for quite far too long, that something that they support, especially in a situation like this, that this is a very delicate situation. And they understand that. So, looking at that perspective, the NFL has to do the right thing here.
Mhm.
Now, let's just take into consideration also from Deshawn Watson's camp. Yes, 2 grand juries made their decision, and they said that there wasn't enough evidence to convict him on criminal charges. We'll put that out there and make sure that people understand that. But the realization here is it's his conduct. And that's one of the things that he signed when he joined the league. And he violated the conduct policy. And that's what the NFL is fighting for. If they're not going to get him for criminal charges, then the NFL still has the right to punish him for the agreements that he signed in the conduct policy, and which he did violate that. And Judge Sue Robinson basically said that he did violate that.
Mm-hmm.
And even goes further, saying that if he is to get physical therapy, it has to be mandated through the team facility, and it can only have certain stipulations. So along those lines, I will give Sue Robinson some credit here. She is saying that, despite his immoral actions and just questionable behavior, the fact is that she really looked at it and said, look, there should need to be stipulations here if he goes about on this. And that's fine. And throughout all the cases we look at, especially, I believe it's 25 at this point, about 24 of them have been settled. Only one still remains. So looking at this now, it becomes a question of, really, we don't want to see someone be punished for anything unfairly, but the thing is, the writing's on the wall here. Deshawn Watson made his decisions on certain aspects of things, and they were poor decisions at that. And the NFL is going to make sure that the NFL is represented as such. So looking at that perspective, I do feel that the league is going to try and push for a stronger suspension. I do think that if they can't get a year, they'll potentially push for maybe about 12. But
yeah, I mean, like you said, just he signed that code of conduct, and really, with how long this has been going on, with how many women have come forward, like at this point, it's kind of like a slap in the face to the league, and it more should come of this. And that's kind of where my thinking was, as far as, the max I can see them possibly getting out of this is that 12 games. I think a year would be, the better, as far as, what you were talking about with the conduct, how to discipline him for that. And even now, really, there wasn't, in this ruling, there was no fine for him at all either. So, just that, and that's another reason why people, I feel like, were upset about this. They felt like it wasn't enough games, and really, with how the Browns worked his contract, it's not like he's going to be missing out on that much money. So you're not really hitting him in the pocketbook either.
And that's a very good point. I mean, along the lines for those 6 games, he's going to probably lose about maybe $300,000, which is nothing at this point to him. So really, the biggest thing is, I mean, especially with the story, and I've tried to handle this with the utmost respect on both sides until all the facts came out, because I didn't want to lean one way, I didn't want to lean the other. I wanted to make sure everybody was fairly represented in the light that they needed to be. And I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that, yes, this man was entitled to due process, but at the same time, there's a pattern of behavior here. And the pattern basically spells out one thing: man has a problem, and he needs help. And I hope that's something that he gets in the near future. And along with the women that have been involved in this story, I'm not one to say if there's truth or lies involved, but at the same time, there was enough of them to feel that there was something inappropriate going on to come forward and say this. And they deserve to be heard. And that's the one thing we have to remember in this. Everyone deserves to have their voice heard, no matter what. Despite what you thought of the process, despite of what you thought of these women coming out and saying this, They have that right. And that's the point I wanted to drive home. That through all out this was more than football. This was a situation about people and how they are disrespected. And these women felt that they had the right to due process, and they did. And Deshawn Watson had the right as well to represent himself and put his story out. But the thing is, you look at the behavior, and it's a very telling tale.
Very well said.
But we'll move on to our next story because we've got a lot to cover, and I definitely didn't want to get too much into this, but another big story kind of just taking a back seat. Jimmy Garoppolo is definitely one of the hot items still left before the regular season starts, and there's plenty of teams looking for a very, very capable quarterback that could potentially help a team maybe turn its fortunes around or potentially put a good squad together. So along the lines, really the four teams right now that seem interested in his services would have to be the Giants, the Falcons, the Seahawks, and potentially the Texans. So, Tyler, with Jimmy Garoppolo's current situation, what would be the best fit for him?
As far as best fit, I think maybe Seattle would be the best fit. But in my opinion, I don't see even though the 49ers, want to get his money off of the books and everything, I don't see them trading him to a division rival there and potentially having that come back to bite them. I think I think it'd be more likely that he ends up with the Giants, and I kind of base that off of looking at or hearing some things going on in the Giants training camp. It sounds like Daniel Jones is really struggling up there right now this year, and maybe the Giants say, okay, we gave this a couple year run, it's not working out, let's kick the tires on Jimmy Garoppolo, see how he does. I mean, he can be a good game manager and put you in or keep you close enough that you can win games. And I see where Four Phony says Giants, he needs Barkley's run game, and that's another factor that there's Barkley, if he can stay healthy, that's a good run game there for him. It plays into more of his strengths. So I think Giants is where he could end up, but Seattle might be the best fit.
And really good points on both teams. Four Phonies coming in with the Giants, Lou Man coming in with Seattle. I really just look at this situation, especially with what the Giants have and what Seattle has. I'm kind of with you on that end. I don't feel that the 49ers would trade him to Seattle because that's just too much unless they feel that confident that they don't need him and they would be better off without him. A kind of Patriots-Bills situation, so to say, back in 2003. The Giants is a very intriguing trade to me because especially you look at what they've been going through in camp, the offense is not picking up as well as they'd hoped. Brian Dable definitely looks frustrated. As much praise as he gives to his defense, you still have to feel really, really underwhelmed with your offense. And Daniel Jones is a huge question mark going forward. So I would feel that Garoppolo would fit well in that system. Dabo is very experienced, especially getting young quarterbacks with really good arms and just helping them excel. Granted, Garoppolo is not as young as he used to be, still a very good arm on him. But I think with the one thing that the Four Phonies brings up with adding him to the run game with Barkley, would that be a potential trade right there? I mean, could the 49ers get Barkley in a trade right there, or would you feel that would be more pick-oriented?
I think it would be more pick-oriented because I think the 49ers like what they have in, I believe it's Mitchell, if I'm remembering right. So I think they would be looking at more picks to potentially over the next year or a couple of years add possibly more pieces for Trey Lance. So, and the Giants have, I think, if I was remember reading correctly today, they have all their picks for the first 5 rounds next year. So, the 49ers could take a shot somewhere in there. And like I said, I think it'd be more pick oriented.
And I don't doubt that. My biggest thing is the 49ers can definitely be contenders at this point, even with Trey Lance. I don't know what he's going to be long term, but where the 49ers still have a very good defense, they still have a pretty good wide receiver core, especially with Debo Samuel. Signing a long term deal, I feel more comfortable about them with their chances at advancing potentially to another NFC championship game.
Yeah, they're definitely a team that can, right now still, just because like you said, their defense is good, their offense, they have pieces there. I want to see a little bit more from Trey Lance. I feel like they're kind of a dark horse right now, but you mentioned their receiving core. Debo is back with them, so that helps because he's a playmaker on the offense. They still have Kittle who can make plays. So yeah, they're like you said, that is an interesting point about if they wanted to bring Barkley in and add him to that backfield, it could give this offense just a little bit more.
And it definitely would, but we'll go ahead and finish this one up. So, if any of these four teams right now, who would be the best fit for Jimmy Garoppolo?
Best fit, I know I started out saying Seattle, but since I don't see that happening, I think Giants would be best.
I would have to go with the Giants as well. Houston would be a very, very far second pick because Mills, to me, as their quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
I do like what I see in him, and I don't think Houston's about ready to give up the farm on him just yet. So, Giants along that way, I feel would be the better fit. And Lou Man brings up his NFC Championship game matchup would be Dallas versus Minnesota, which is a very bold take. I think Minnesota is still good. It's just going to be interesting to see what their head coach does with that squad. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting season. There's a lot of what ifs.
Definitely.
Speaking of Debo Samuel, of course, we've got to bring up his contract extension that was given as of last night. A 3-year, $73.5 extension and a $58.1 million guaranteed. Debo Samuel didn't have to wait too long to get his deal before the regular season starts. And being a key piece and definitely making sure that the 49ers had their go-to guy. And Samuel's definitely probably had stipulations in his contract this upcoming season about potentially being more of a ball catcher and not a ball runner. So I really think along those lines, that was maybe one big selling point, especially with locking up an extension. I think he wanted to potentially add that line in because he doesn't want to be a Swiss Army knife. He doesn't want to be a Cordell Patterson. He wants to be a Terrell Owens. And I don't have a problem with a receiver wanting to play at the position that they excel at.
Yeah, for sure. And that was, I think one of his, like you said, one of his big things going into all the contract talk. I was looking on Sport Track today at his contract and everything, and if they have the details right, it looks like there are some incentives for him still, like in that run game, but or kind of being that utility guy. If their numbers and breakdown was actually right, it looks like he could get $650,000 for 380 plus rushing yards and 150,000 for 3 rushing touchdowns. And really, with how explosive he is, if that's just throughout a season, he could probably do that pretty easy and still not be used as much in that role as he was last year. I'd have to go back and look at his stats from last year, see how all that kind of pans out. But I think you're right. He wants to be out wide more, just catching the ball, not brought into the backfield, used as a running back, because then it runs into the situation of, well, yeah, I'm asking for all this money, but it's because I'm literally your offense right now. You have me out wide catching passes, you bring me in the backfield, all this. So I'm doing it all for you. Like, pay me a running back and a receiver salary combined. But I think this is big for the 49ers. They didn't fold and give in to him wanting to be traded away. They kept working with them, trying to get something worked out. And like you said, I have to wonder if he did have a line in there to where, hey, you need to knock down my usage on that kind of utility back stuff and just let me catch the ball.
And a point I want to bring up, and it's not one that I really want to bring up, but it's definitely a point of interest, and I think it should be discussed just very briefly. Out of all the four major receivers that were trying to get a contract this year, between Debo, between DK, between McLaurin, and A.J. Brown, of course, A.J. Brown goes on his Twitter and basically goes on a tirade saying that, of course, he was the one that got traded, and honestly, just basically pointing the finger at the organization, that it was them and not him that didn't want to stay. So, of course, I bring this point up because interesting point number one, and also number two, really along the lines, people continue to say that Philly got the better deal, and I don't see a loser in this deal. Tennessee needed assets. They needed draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they weren't going to pay Brown, top three wide receiver money. It just wasn't going to happen. Not after 2 seasons where he's missed a potential about 7 games, to where it's actually injuries between either the hamstring or the thigh. So that was another selling point there. So Tyler, very quickly, along with all the deals that have come out, I know A.J. Brown's probably tweeting just a tweet, but what's your take on the whole situation?
My take on the whole AJ situation is, I'm not saying that both sides, there's not some blame both ways. But I think AJ was just impatient, really, when it comes down to it. We saw McLaurin's deal got done. I believe it was July. I know DK's and Debo's deals were done in July. AJ wanted his deal done in April. He wasn't going to have it any other way but for it to be done then. And granted, yeah, the Titans, their offer that, come out, it was a low ball offer or a lower offer. But instead of trying to actually work with them and the numbers we were hearing from him, there was not going to be a middle ground. Maybe the Titans, if they would have offered a little bit more at first, they could have worked something out. But I honestly think that AJ just didn't want to be in Tennessee anymore. I think he saw a potential out and he decided, hey, let's see if I can go play with my best friend. Just my thoughts on it.
And regardless of whatever he wanted to do, the situation worked out for both parties. And as Lou Man brings up, we got Burks. I'm happy. Yeah. And that's how a lot of Titans fans feel. Burks has been doing phenomenal in camp, and we'll definitely talk about that in our next segment coming up. And AJ got paid. And the Titans got draft picks. They got assets. And also moving forward, they open up the books so they can sign Big Jeff to a lucrative contract, which will probably go along the lines. He's probably going to get Vita Veta money, maybe Chris Jones money.
Yeah, for sure.
And moving into our next piece, of course, a lot of interest has been on the football field, but it's like, what is on the football players' helmets? Well, friends, I will tell you that spaceball-looking hat is called a guardian cap. And for most of us that have watched college football for the last few years, these have been kind of coming into trend, and now they've made their way to the NFL, potentially hoping that these will actually help lower the risks of head injuries and potentially keep the players safe, especially in a practice atmosphere. But unfortunately, some players aren't very big fans of them, thinking that this will actually increase injuries because players are going to get used to these paddings so often. So, Tyler, what's your take on adding guardian caps to the practice fields?
So I have mixed feelings on it because obviously you don't want injuries to happen to players, and especially when it comes to head injuries, brain injuries, all the like, you want to make sure that players are taken care of and give them the best chance to be safe. I saw some of the players talking about it, and I I think they had a couple of good points. Um, if you're wearing this in practice and you do hit heads with someone or collide, like it does soften the blow some. And when you get in game, you're not gonna have it on. So that collision, it's gonna be more jarring when you hit. I mean, it's kind of like you think about it. If you jump down on your couch or on your bed and it's softer, it cushions that blow some. But if you have hardwood floor or even a carpeted floor and you just decide to jump down on it's going to hurt and possibly ring your bell a little bit. Um, it if we're really driving more towards safety, how much is it completely helping if they only wear it in practice, but when games come and you actually have guys throughout a whole game moving full speed and colliding, hitting heads, or maybe accidentally leading with their head, how much safety is there really going to be there, I guess, is my thing. So that's why I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's good because we definitely need to make sure the players are taken care of. But flip side, I can see where the players are coming from.
And my whole point is really it's a tool. It's basically a tool to help their lives be easier on the field. I see it as somewhat as a safety hat. Basically, just something a construction worker would have to wear, especially on the job.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I don't see it as a hindrance. I see it as a tool to teach the players not to use it. And that's where the coaches come in.
That's a good
If
point.
I'm a head coach, I have to make sure that these guys understand just because you're wearing a spaceball looking hat on your head doesn't mean I'm gonna let you start hitting guys in the head.
Right.
That's not what I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to teach you not how to use it. This is basically the equivalent of like baby arm weights in the pool. I'm going to blow them up on the arms and make sure that you got them, but you might be big enough not to use them, but they're just there to keep you safe. So I put on the coaches to make sure that this thing doesn't become a hindrance and it doesn't become something that ends up really just become a way for players to use their helmets once again, especially in tackling situations. These things are basically here to help.
And that's a very good way of looking at it and good points there because, like you said, it does need to come back on the coaches at that point because if they are letting the guys, when they have these on in practice, kind of go away from what the league has been pushing over the last couple of years of what's going to be safe, considered like a safe tackle, this and that, or what's going to be flagged. That's a good point of coaches don't need to slack up on still enforcing those rules. And if a player starts leading with their helmet or this or that, then okay, we're gonna have to pull you aside and have a talk on this.
For any coach that practices technique and uses that as one of their selling points to their team, this is where it comes in. every time that you're using that thing, you need to be doing things the right way. You need to be having your head in the right position. You need to be positioning yourself to make the tackle the right way. And you don't need to be using that thing to target. So it's a tool. Use it properly. And finally, in our last bit of news, we've got football this week, you guys. We have no longer to wait. It is time for us to get ready and enjoy a little bit of football. But yes, I understand it's a preseason game. Who the hell cares? It's football. Be happy, damn it.
And it's the Jaguars and Raiders. I mean, what more could you ask for starting off preseason?
I know. You're getting Josh McDaniels. You're getting Doug Peterson against second and third stringer teams. So you are just spoiled rotten. Thanks, NBC.
It's like a really bad Christmas morning. It's Christmas, so you're still excited, but you're like, eh.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of like the equivalent of like you wanted a PlayStation 5, but you ended up with a Nintendo Cube. And not only that, it's a used Nintendo Cube.
Yeah.
But along the lines, there are some intriguing storylines there. I think Doug Peterson getting a new head coaching job, Josh McDaniels in his second stint. Really, along those lines, I think those are the bigger storylines coming out of that. And along the lines, of course, we get to celebrate our new inducted Hall of Famers.
Yep, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned it. The biggest thing is football's back. I was telling you earlier that the biggest thing for me, even though it's the Jags and the Raiders, and at most we may see, like the offensive starters for a drive, if even that, if they even get out there. But just seeing two teams actually go up against each other versus seeing these camp videos of, teams offense and defense facing off against each other. We actually get to see two different teams match up. These guys that are lower on the roster or, just fighting for a roster spot or trying to really lock in their spot, get to go out there and play and show what they can do. So, yeah, it's so happy football's back this week. Not sure if you're muted or if I've just lost you.
Always with the bugs, but I'm glad I get this stuff. I'm glad we do this stuff before the regular season starts so we can get it worked out and especially get better as the season progresses. But yes, Thursday night, we'll have a very intriguing game between the Jaguars and the Raiders. Sunday night football on Thursday, I guess if that's what they want to call it. I still don't know. It's still marketed as Sunday night football, but it's on a Thursday. But there'll be some
I
interesting
actually just caught that. I just caught that after you said. I was like, wait, he's right.
That's just what NBC does, especially like in the playoff games. They call it Sunday night football, but I think they just have like on the bottom on Saturday. So I don't want to try and figure out I don't want to try and figure it out too much. It's this intriguing game. Football's back. Just be happy about it. That's all you have to be.
That's right.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break. And when we come back, we have got training camp news to talk about, and we're going to jump in it quick and give our takes of what we've enjoyed throughout the first week of training camp. I'm Michael Bishop of the Power, and we'll be back in 30 seconds. The Power Hour is on the air, live streaming to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I'm your host, Michael Bishop, and thank you for joining us on this Monday evening. It's great to see everybody in the show. We've had a lot of conversation and a lot of chatter in the chat room. Very happy and always great to see that. Joining us tonight from Titans Time Podcast is our good friend Tyler. Tyler, once again, thank you for joining us on the show. We love having you on every time we can get you to talk about football. And I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to find you and get them to your social media platforms and get you to all that good information.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me on. It's always a blast coming on your show with you, breaking everything down and seeing all these different opinions on everything. And if you want to find my show, you can find me on YouTube, Titans Time Podcast. Also, do an audio version. It's on all podcast platforms, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just type in Titans Time Podcast. Social medias, Twitter is at Titans_time, Instagram, Titans Time Podcast, Facebook, Titans Time, and trying to get more active on TikTok as well, trying to keep up with the Power Hour and putting all this good content out there. And you can find me on TikTok at Titans Time.
He's one of my favorite and one of the best in the biz. Check him out. He's always given the best perspectives and some fresh perspectives at that. Tyler's always getting that stuff out, so make sure you check him out on all his social media platform sites. He has got the goods. And thank you very much, Carrie. I appreciate putting these commercials out for y'all. It's for entertainment purposes. That's what I'm here for, entertain. And don't forget, folks, while you're watching, if you love the show, help it grow. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at The Power Hour 615. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, to smash that subscribe button, because that's how we get to grow. That's how we grow and show you that we care. And don't forget also, sharing is caring. Make sure you share this video to all your friends and all the Titan people out there that are interested in football stats, facts, and information. So that's what I do. I am a man of the people. I am here for you. Well, Tyler, we've got a lot of training camp stuff to talk about, so let's go ahead and waste no more time as we lock it down and jump into it as the first week of training camp is rolled to a close and we move forward with what's next to come. A lot of great things that have happened and a lot of things we'd like to see improve, but let's start with some of the basic stuff. So going into the season, we knew that the offensive line was going to be a big question mark. But along the lines, it seems that there's been some very good rumblings, especially from Coach Vrabel and from some inside sources saying that very much Dylan Radunz is in line to be in position for the tackle job. And surprisingly, Aaron Brewer, of all people, has come out and become basically one of Vrabel's go-to guys that could potentially lock down this guard job where Saffold is left it vacant. So, really, what has the tough $2 steak shown you that he's ready to step up and become the go-to guy on the first team offensive line?
I mean, what he showed me is just his heart and how hard he's willing to work for it, because Brewer is not the biggest guy, and things that really stuck with me were listening to Big Jeff talk about him today, because Big Jeff in the middle of our defensive line, he goes up against a lot of these bigger guards all across the league, and he talked about how going up against Aaron Brewer, it changes things up, because it helps a lot of the Titans defensive linemen with keeping their pad level low like they're supposed to. You know, Vrabel's always preaching to them, you got to keep your pad level low, get lower than the other guy. And going against a undersized guard like Brewer, I mean, they have to do that in order to be able to get by him, because if he's able to get up and under him, he's got him where he wants them. And, Simmons talked about how just the heart and mentality that Brewer brings is, he's got a heart of a lion. He's pushing past his size, and I'm liking what I'm seeing from him in camp.
And, already been discussed, he's undersized for what a regular NFL prototypical lineman is. But Vrabel has already come out and said the man is basically battling, and as you said earlier, has the heart of a lion. And it's really just what this team needs is somebody that's going to be gritty in your face and push guys around. And if that's what he's bringing every practice, then that's what I want to see on the line. So, what would you like to see from him in his first official start in the preseason game in an upcoming week with Baltimore?
What I would like to see from him, the main thing I would like to see right now is just how he, aside from Big Jeff and some other guys on the Titans line, how he handles himself against some of these bigger linemen on other teams, especially the Ravens. Because I know there's been some film out on him before over the last couple of years where when he's come in and played that guard spot, he's gotten blown up a couple of times. So this year I want to see him in that preseason game out there holding his own, buying time for whatever quarterback is back in the pocket, and being able to move guys in the run game. Because we know that's the main thing for this Titans offense is they like to run the ball. So if you can't move people off of the ball, especially on run plays to like the left, then you're probably not going to win that starting job. So, and Lou Man puts it, but power and performance. So that's really what I want to see is just him moving people and not showing that size doesn't affect him against other competition.
And great point you make. And Four Phonies brings up a good point. Brewer's quickness could help him, the zone blocking. And really, that's what I want to see. I want to see him get down and gritty. This is what this offense has prided itself in. They can get nasty and open holes up for King Henry or Son Haskins, whoever, or even Dontrell Hillard, who's running the ball. I want to see this offensive line just get in guys' faces and make a difference this year. They need to be the strength going forward. And we don't want to see any kind of repeat, especially going forward last year in the Arizona game. So already from what we're hearing, it's very good stuff. Of course, there's probably work to be done there, but you got to love what Brewer's been doing at this part. He's getting out there, he's getting dirty, and he's shown that he is for the boys. Definitely another perspective we've seen is Malik Willis's progress out on the field. And at times it can be on and off. So we really want to see more consistency, but it's only going to come with more reps and potentially just getting more practice time under his belt. So
May have lost you a little bit there. Sure, we'll have Power Hour back with us here in just a minute.
okay, we might have had some technical difficulties, folks, so I apologize about that. All right, we got Tyler back. I think we had like a little glitch, so our apologies. So I think it's potentially raining outside, so we might have had some interference. So we'll try and get through that. So my apologies on that, y'all.
I completely understand that out here where I live too. The rain can be a major factor.
So we are on the air still, guys. So my apologies for that. So getting back to the question at hand, Malik Willis has done phenomenal at times and at times looked like a rookie as usual. So at this point right now, what's impressed you the most about Malik Willis and what he's done in training camp so far?
What has impressed me the most is definitely a couple of the deep balls that he's thrown. I mean, he's got an arm on him, and he has a lot of zip on the ball. Seeing some of these, even the shorter passes that he's throwing, it's crazy to see how much zip he has on that and getting it to the receivers. but definitely, like you've mentioned, we need to see him be more consistent. Um, looks like, from what I've been seeing, his footwork still needs to keep improving. And, there'll be plays where he's on the money and on time, and then others where his throw is off the mark, or he holds on to the ball too long and doesn't trust himself, I guess, in delivering it on time, and he ends up deciding to tuck it and run. So I want to see him starting to string together more of these good reps and then good days, because it's going to happen. Like you said, he needs more time, needs more reps, and I'm hoping maybe it won't be too much longer, and we'll see him stringing together days like Burks and Mccreary and some of these other guys.
So at this point right now, do you feel comfortable with having 3 quarterbacks on the depth chart this year?
I I think so. I wouldn't mind having 3 quarterbacks on the depth chart. Um, really, I think that's the way you kind of have to go about it, because even though Willis did fall in the draft, I'm sure if you didn't keep him on the active roster and he went to practice squad, if you didn't protect him every week, then someone would swoop in and grab him. So,
And that's a great point. But the one thing I'll give Mike Vrabel credit for, that I think he's one of the best head coaches of the business for this, he's a great person at finding the right lineup for the right game. And if anything, he understands the fact that they're trying to grow somebody. They're trying to find a guy that they could potentially move forward with for the future. Malik Willis being that guy at the moment. They know they've got to get a guy locked in. I don't think it's a bad option to have him wear a cap and hold the tablet. But along those lines, I do like what I've seen from him. I think he's going to continue to grow, especially the more reps that he'll get in practice situations, which I feel the offense is going to try their best to do that. But if he can get the main stuff down, he's already starting to trend forward, and there's a lot to like there. But moving forward to our next little bit, I would definitely have to give roses to Roger Mccreary, especially after today. Roger came in, put on the pads, and handled business. Forget the fact that you've seen some videos of him where he has had some troubles trying to create matchups and potentially gets beaten. The fact is that Roger Mccreary is just the guy. He'll take hits, but he'll keep coming at you. And that's the one thing I love about Roger Mccreary. He's that guy that's going to keep battling. And today, if he had to have a good day in practice, today was that day. He came out and he balled. I mean, the man caused trouble all day, and Traylon Burks definitely had his hands full with him.
He did, for sure. And those short arms aren't seeming to be a problem right now. That being the knock on him. Even before putting pads on, he was able to break up a deep pass to NWI, and then, like you mentioned today, he had probably, his best day, and it just so happened to come when they first put pads on, and he had like 5 pass breakups. I think one that he broke up was almost a interception. But like you mentioned, he's a guy that he's going to keep coming at you. We saw the early reps of the matchup between him and Burks, where going up against a bigger, more physical receiver, and Burks got the best of him a couple of times. But I have to have a lot of respect for Mccreary, because he gets right back up in that action, and he's not backing up, not scared of the competition there. I'm going to be this little gnat on you right now. And he's also gotten a chance to really step up even more with Elijah Molden being out the last couple practices. So having a day like today, where you're not having to maybe split some reps with Molden, and you're having that kind of day, that speaks volume.
And really, I think the only way to fairly describe him is he's an F up guy. He gets in there and he F things up. Like you said, he's the gnat in your face mentality kind of guy. Along those lines, I just see him potentially just getting in there and being a good rotation guy at the moment for now. And for Phony says Mccreary, a good pitcher by J. Rob to add depth at DB. We're not searching the streets after Buster retired. And that's a great point. You know, you've got youth. You've got a guy that's going to go out there and just be aggressive, which is what he's continued to do throughout this training camp. And I'm excited from what I've seen. I want to see him in the first game against Baltimore. I want to see him get in guys' faces. Be smart about it. Don't hurt yourself. But I do want to see that aggression continue, especially as training camp moves forward. Hitting our next little bit of news, of course, is the wide receivers. A huge question mark going into the offseason, especially with the losses of A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. We really didn't know what this young core of wide receivers was going to be. There was a lot of questions going forward. The addition of Bobby Trees was an intriguing one, especially for the price the Tennessee Titans paid for him. But still, the ACL was a big main concern. Then, of course, we had Des Fitzpatrick, where we didn't know what it was going to be like trying to get him involved with the offense. Was he going to be prepared? In WI, could he grow into a bigger role? Kyle Phillips, what was he going to be as a 6th-round pick? And, of course, Mason Kinsey always coming in the discussion, can he get to the next level? Basically, all these wide receivers that I've named have just come in and shown out. And in a year where they need guys to be leaders in that wide receiver room, you've got guys that are ready to step up and actually handle business. And that just impresses me.
Yeah, it's great to see that, like you mentioned, coming into this year after losing AJ and Julio, and getting Robert Woods, who's coming back from injury. A lot of Titans fans, including myself, we were looking at the receiver room like, okay, this is definitely a different look than last year before training camp. Do we possibly add someone later? What are these guys going to look like? And I've been very impressed with our receivers throughout camp. You mentioned it. Burks, he's come into training camp with a fire lit under him. He's ready to go. He's took accountability for mini camp, the shape that he was in, all of that. And right now he's looking like a 1st-round pick should look. He's going out there making plays. Doesn't really matter who he's up against, whether it's Fulton, Mccreary, even today against a big linebacker in Zach Cunningham making a contested catch against him. So he's looking good. You also have Robert Woods, who his recovery looks like it's going well. Saw the other day where he was able to go up over Caleb Farley and make a great catch. So it's good to have him and just the leadership that he brings, that veteran presence into the locker room. It's really good for these guys. And you mentioned so many names there, and I've been really impressed with a lot of these guys, especially like Phillips and Kinsey, who, when you see them against, of course, defensive backs that are lower on the depth chart or probably won't make the team, they're burning these guys. And even Kevin Byard today, after Phillips put yet another DB on skates, Byard was like, okay, I need to get in there right quick. And, kind of slowed the rookie down a little bit and was like, all right, you're good, but don't get too over the top yet. And, Kinsey, who's been around, if I remember right, I thought I saw where down in some red zone drills, he actually got one on Byard today. And can't forget about Josh Malone. He's been making plays as well.
And that's a great point, bringing up Josh Malone. He has had an extraordinary camp as we have progressed forward. Really, along the lines, I'm just happy that this wide receiving room has just excelled to the challenge and they're continuing to make plays out on the field. The one thing I do want to continue to see them doing is what Vrabel continues to preach to the team and compete. I don't think there's been a time where we've had just so much raw talent in a wide receiving room, and I've just felt so optimistic about it. With last year, you had veteran presence. So that's a whole different scenario. But with this, you have a veteran, you have a guy that's been with the team for a year, and you have a lot of raw young talent that is eventually going to get the chance to step out and show what they've got.
Yeah, 100%. And, with how these guys are competing right now against each other, looking over all the wide receivers that are going out there and making plays, I'm actually to a point of where I'm like, I don't know what guys make this roster. Like, I don't know who you cut. And it's going to be interesting to see these guys continuing to battle out for however many wide receiver spots the Titans decide to have on their 53.
Whether they decide to keep 6 or 7 wide receivers, it's going to be a big question, especially when they make that decision right when the final cuts come. But along those lines, you got to like where the Titans are heading, especially with the wide receiver talent that they have amassed over the last year. And finally, and this is going to be an interesting take, and I've had a lot to talk about, and I had to come to one point, and I feel it's important that I end on a strong point. Now, of course, I could have went with the tight ends. The tight ends have been showing out endlessly with Austin Hooper and Shiga Congo getting endless praise. I could have gone with the defensive front. I could have gone with the edges. Really, there's a lot of interesting scenarios that I could have gone with. But I have to go back to leadership. And I just saw Ducky show up on the show, and it's good to see you, Ducky. Don't get to see you much on the show, but good to see you. But you're going to be mad at me, and I know you know why. Ducky, hear me out on this. I've been impressed with Ryan Tannehill coming into camp. As of now, he has yet to throw an interception, and he's been making pretty good decisions thus far. Granted, they've had a few miscommunications, but the fact is Tannehill's come in with a fresh perspective, and he's handling business, which is what I want to see from my leader under center. Despite the fact that he did struggle in a playoff game, let's put that behind us. This is a new year. This is a new season. There's new possibilities. But of course, for Tennessee Titan fans, it's the same damn thing with the national media basically putting us right behind the Colts. We'll get to that another day. I don't have enough. This is the Power Hour. This is not the Power 6. I can't do a full 6-hour show on that. We'll do that another day. But let's just be honest with ourselves. Tannehill's out there, and he's handling business. That's what I want to see from my quarterback. And as long as he's going to have the job, I want to see him continue to do that.
Yeah. And I really couldn't put it any better. This is going into the season. You know that Tannehill's the quarterback. And this is the leadership that you want to see from him, especially since it's in the past, that playoff game. This is how you want to see him rebound. Come into camp focused, as you have on the screen there, revamped and refreshed, like he's ready to go. The biggest thing is, and you mentioned this as well, we think back to last year's training camp, and Tannehill was throwing a lot of interceptions. And we thought, oh, that's just because our defense has improved. Don't really think much about it. He'll be fine when the regular season gets here, yada, yada, yada. I mean, just all of that, just writing off the interceptions. But then we get into the year, and yes, there were other circumstances, injuries, this and that. But he had a bad year interception wise. So it was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, maybe those training camp reps did kind of reflect what was going to go on in the season. And now you mentioned this year, no interceptions yet through training camp, has had a lot of great passes, and even Vrabel commented on how he's very sure of himself and he's fitting balls in there. His timing is looking really good. And yes, there's some that he'd like to have back, but I think that's the case with every player. Like, there's going to be some plays that they want back even in practice against their own team. But he's coming out being that leader and just has that confidence about him right now in camp. And that's that's all you can ask for.
And it's a process bouncing back from a loss like that. We knew the situation that he went through. We knew that he had to go to therapy and actually work this out because it hit him so hard. In a mental state to where you just get to the point where you just truly let yourself down, and also your teammates, to the fact that you knew you had to go get professional help and discuss this. It just showed how much this affected him, not only as the leader of this team, but as an individual. The fact that he's come out now and really just shown that he's going to make a difference. He's out there putting the work in. And then, especially with around young talent, especially on the tight end set, especially with his wide receivers, with a few veteran help, the fact that he's going out there and making plays is a good start. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to win a Super Bowl. It means that they're on the right track to make things happen. It's going to continue to be a process. He's going to have to make better decisions. He's going to have to throw the ball away if he can't find anybody and not make bad reads or forces. Ryan Tannehill is the future of this team as of right now. He's not the long-term future. He's the now future. And in situations like this, if he can continue to keep his mindset right, if he can continue to do the little things and elevate with the new talent around him, especially at the tight end set where he has excelled at, Tennessee has a chance to revamp themselves and continue the trend of making the playoffs. Of course, this being a team sport, everybody has to do their job, but none other is important as the quarterback.
Couldn't have said it any better. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there.
And with all these position battles going through camp, we're going to see our fair share of injuries soon, which it's a part of the business. I hope that's not the case. I hope everybody can make it this year without major injuries, but you have to be realistic as well. So along the lines, we wish for the health of all the players and the coaches as well as they continue to progress throughout. Training camp continues to roll on next week. We'll get more info out as it goes along. Padded practices will become more of a thing. And of course, next week will be the Titans' first official preseason game with the Baltimore Ravens. We're definitely looking forward to that, and we'll definitely get you more info when that comes up soon. Well, guys, I want to thank everybody for joining us on the show tonight. It is fantastic to get everybody in these comments and just be very engaging. I love it. Blue Man, thanks for joining us on the show. Always great having you in. Four Phony says, could lower interceptions in camp be the new passing game, and DBs don't know what's coming, which that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I won't take credit from the DBs. I mean, especially the ones they are picking off on Woodside and, Willis. But, I mean, at the same time, it's always great to just get that kind of perspective in, and it's great seeing the fans give their perspective too. So very great to see an engaging show. Shout out to Mom as well. Know she enjoyed the show. Know she enjoyed interacting with everybody. Fantastic guests, having just a lot of input on here. So thank you all for joining us on the show tonight. And definitely thank you for Tyler from Titans Time Podcast once again for joining us on the show tonight. We love having him on and his insight. Tyler, one more time before we get out of here, let the fans know where to find you on all your social media platforms and where to get that good info.
Definitely will. And got to thank you once again. Always a pleasure coming on and talking Titans football and just football in general with you. You can find the podcast, the audio version, on all podcast platforms: Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Just type in Titans Time Podcast. Find me on YouTube, Titans Time Podcast. Social medias, Twitter at Titans_time, Instagram, Titans Time Podcast, Facebook, Titans Time, and TikTok at Titans Time.
And we thank you once again, Tyler, for joining us tonight. It's always wonderful having you. We'll definitely get you back in as the regular season starts to kick off. Got to get more of that good insight. And everybody, thank you once again for watching the show tonight. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Get us to those subscribes that we need to. We'd like to break 1,000 this year. If we get further, cool. We'll see what happens. But make sure you change that subscribe button red to gray, and make sure that you share the show, because sharing is caring. We want to get this info out to all of the Titans fans to make sure that they know what they're missing. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms at Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, and Facebook at the Power Hour 615. So thank you once again for joining us on the show tonight. I'm Michael Bishop with the Power Hour. Take care and tighten up.
Tighten up.